Long ago, when the desert winds whispered secrets and the Nile carried the lifeblood of Egypt, the gods themselves walked among men. Among these divine beings was Osiris, noble and just, the god of kingship, fertility, and the afterlife. He ruled, not with an iron fist, but with fairness, wisdom, and compassion. Under Osiris's reign, Egypt flourished. The Nile overflowed with generosity, crops sprouted in abundance, and the people lived in peace. His sister wife, Isis, stood beside him, revered for her magic and devotion. Together, they embodied harmony and order, Ma'at, the sacred balance of the world. But harmony often stirs envy. In the shadow of Osiris's glory, his brother Seth seethed with rage. Seth was the god of storms, deserts, and chaos, powerful, wild, and untamed. To him, Osiris's gentle rule seemed weakness. He believed the throne of Egypt should be his, and so envy curdled into hatred, and hatred into treachery. Seth conceived the plot as cunning as it was cruel. He ordered the finest craftsmen to build a magnificent chest of cedar wood, inlaid with gold. Its size measured to fit only one man, Osiris. When the chest was ready, Seth held a grand banquet and invited gods and nobles alike. Music filled the hall, wine overflowed, and laughter concealed the malice in Seth's heart. At the height of the feast, he stood and declared, "Behold this chest fit for a king. Whoever lies within it perfectly shall keep it as a gift." One by one, the guests tried to fit inside, but the chest was always too large or too small. Finally, Osiris, ever trusting, ever unsuspecting, stepped forward. He lay down inside, the lid shut as though made for him alone. In that instant, Seth's true face was revealed. He slammed the lid shut, nailed it fast, and sealed it with molten lead. Before any could intervene, he and his followers dragged the chest to the river and hurled it into the Nile. The currents seized it, carrying it far from Egypt's heart. The joyous reign of Osiris was ended in silence. With his brother dead, Seth seized the throne. But unlike Osiris, his rule was not of peace, it was of chaos. Storms battered the land, crops failed, and despair settled over the people. Egypt had fallen into darkness, but love is stronger than despair. Isis, Osiris's devoted wife, refused to surrender him to death. She donned the garments of a mourner, and with divine magic guiding her steps, she wandered the world in search of her beloved. The journey was long and perilous. Finally, she discovered the chest washed ashore and embraced by the roots of a mighty tree in Byblos. The tree had grown around it, hiding Osiris from the world. Isis, with reverence, freed the chest and brought her husband's body back to Egypt. She concealed him in the marshes of the Nile Delta, hoping to restore him to life. But Seth, ever watchful, discovered her secret. Consumed with fury, he dragged Osiris's body from its hiding place, tore it into 14 pieces, and scattered them across the length of Egypt so that Isis could never restore him again. Yet Isis's devotion knew no limits. With the help of her sister Nephthys, the wise god Thoth, and Anubis, the jackal-headed lord of embalming, she searched for every fragment of Osiris. Through marsh and a desert, village and temple, they gathered his scattered remains, piece by piece. When all but one were found, Isis wrapped Osiris in linen, bound him with sacred resin, and performed the first act of embalming. Her spells and laments wove life into the silent form. Osiris stored, but not to return as king of the living. Instead, he was reborn as lord of the Duat, the underworld, where he would judge the souls of the dead for all eternity. Osiris's death had not been in vain. From him, was born the promise of resurrection, of life after death, and of justice beyond the grave. But Isis's story did not end with grief. From a love with Osiris, she conceived a son, Horus, the falcon-headed god. She raised him in secret, hiding him from Seth's wrath. In the marshes of Chemis, she nurtured him with magic, taught him courage, and whispered into his heart the destiny that awaited him, to avenge his father and reclaim the throne. Years passed, and Horus grew strong, swift as the falcon and noble in spirit. When he reached manhood, he stepped forward, unflinching, and declared, before the council of gods, "The throne is mine, by blood and by right. I am Horus, son of Osiris. I will avenge my father, and Egypt shall know peace again." So began one of the longest and most extraordinary wars in the history of myth and legend, a conflict of gods that would rage for 80 years. The gods gathered in Heliopolis, where Ra, the sun god, presided as judge. Yet even Ra hesitated. Seth was strong, cunning, and already upon the throne. Horus was young, noble, and rightful heir. Unable to decide, Ra decreed that the two should prove themselves through trials of strength, wit, and endurance. The first challenge took them into the Nile. Both transformed into hippopotamuses and fought beneath the water for 3 days. Their roars shook the riverbed. The fight raged until Isis, fearing for her son, cast a harpoon that struck Seth. Out of mercy, she released him. But Horus, furious that his enemy was spared, turned on his own mother in wrath. The war was not only of weapons, but of hearts and loyalties. Another trial came, in the form of a race across a lake in divine boats. Horus carved his vessel from wood, while Seth cheated, fashioning his from stone. But when Seth's heavy boat touched the water, it sank instantly, while Horus's skimmed the surface like a falcon's wing. Still, Seth would not yield. Defeat only drove Seth to greater trickery. In one infamous episode, he invited Horus to a feast. There, he tried to humiliate him with a vile act, seeking to claim dominance. But Horus, protected by Isis and cunning in his own right, turned the trap against Seth. The council of gods laughed at Seth's humiliation, but the struggle dragged on. Isis herself once captured Seth in chains, her magic binding him tight. Yet when he begged for release, she showed mercy again and let him go. Horus, enraged by her compassion, struck out against her. So bitter had the war become that even mother and son were divided. The gods themselves split into factions. Thoth, the god of wisdom, sought peace and fairness. Neith, goddess of war and wisdom, demanded that justice be done. Ra hesitated still, torn between strength and legitimacy. The war dragged on, neither side yielding, Egypt itself caught in the storm. At last, when 80 years of strife had passed, a voice rose from beyond the living world. It was Osiris, speaking from the throne of the Duat. Let Horus take the throne. The one who defends justice and honors his father must rule the living. The words of the dead king could not be ignored. The council of gods agreed, and judgment was delivered. Horus was crowned the true king of Egypt. Seth, broken but not destroyed, was cast into the desert, where his storms would forever rage over barren sands. The story did not end with victory. Osiris remained in the underworld, the eternal judge of souls, offering hope of life beyond death. Horus reigned in the world of the living, the embodiment of rightful kingship, and every pharaoh who followed was seen as his living form. Seth, though defeated, was never erased, for chaos cannot be destroyed, it can only be subdued. The desert storms, the barren lands, and the violence of nature were his domain. A reminder that order must always battle against disorder. Thus, the tale of Osiris, Isis, Horus, and Seth became more than myth. It became the foundation of Egyptian belief that justice must triumph over betrayal, that truth must conquer deceit, and that life will rise again, even after death. Etched in temple walls, whispered in tombs, and passed down through the ages, their story is not merely of gods and kings, but of brothers torn apart, a mother's undying love, and the eternal war between order and chaos. If this story has touched your spirit, don't let it vanish into the shadows of time. Subscribe, like, and share so our history continues to breathe. And in the comments, tell us the next forgotten story you'd like us to bring back to life.